All praise are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad, the master of the first and the last, and his family and his companions and all those who call to his way and follow his sunnah to the day of judgment. My beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, this is the last in the series of From Survival to Revival. And this is a critical issue for the Muslims, not only here in Bermuda, but in all parts of the world. Because we have great potential. We have many Muslims in different positions. We have countries with large numbers. We have rich people. But there's certain elements on the inside. Remember the key verse we learned from Surah Al-Ra'd, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. So the first change, the major change, has to be within ourselves. It's something to do with our character. It's something to do with our relationship with each other. We cannot blame it all on external forces. We cannot say, oh, the disbelievers are doing this and whatever. The real issue now is on us. And this goes from not only from the international level, the government level, but also from the personal level. On a personal level, we all have to look into our Islam and to look into our families, our communities, in order for this revival, inshallah, to come about, which we are all hoping, inshallah, will happen for the Muslim world. When I first returned from studying in Medina, this is many years ago, I had gone in the field. I was asked to teach in a masjid in Canada, the Jami Mosque, which at that time was the largest masjid maybe in the whole country. And I thought that there would be issues of aqeedah, of fiqh. There would be a lot of serious issues. And I thought that I would have to be looking at my book and getting fatwas. But when I got there and was serving in this position as imam in this masjid for a period of time, I realized that the bulk of the problems coming, 60 to 70% of the problems were actually family problems. It was problems of divorce. It was problems of children, teenagers. It was problem of the difference between younger generation, older generation, psychological problems, things to do with ourself, our own personal self. And so I actually left the job of being imam and we opened up what is called Islamic Social Services and Resources Association. We opened up a special center that was not only doing dawah and teaching, but it was dealing with social problems of Muslims. Social problems. And we at that time had thousands of people coming from different parts of the Muslim world. We had all schools of thought. We had people coming from combat zones, people coming from Europe, people coming from Asia, Africa. And the issues on the inside was amazing. It's like social work. And so we did it in a professional way. We didn't just do it if a person had a problem, and many of the problems were coming from family issues. We didn't say to the sister or the brother, patience, patience, patience. Right? We want to deal with the issue. So we want to deal with it in a professional way and in an Islamic way. And it is through this that I realized that one of the key issues in the revival, and it's part of the 10 points that we originally brought, also part of the discussion we had last night, and that is developing and protecting healthy, empowered families. That the families of Islam have to be strong. They have to be empowered. And you noticed last night that I mentioned that the women have to be empowered. And I want to congratulate you for bringing the sisters here to watch the program. Because in many communities, they will block the sisters from watching the program or block the children from the program. But if you look at the community, 2/3 of the community are made up of young people and women. Only 1/3 of the community are men over 35 years old. And so people still say, what would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about this? What is your proof of this? And one of the amazing lessons that we are learning is that the Quran itself is not only a book of tilawah. It's not just to read. But as the great scholars would say, tahsin tilawatihi wa tadabbur ayatihi wa itba' awamirihi. Three areas. Read it in a beautiful way according to the rules of tajweed. Secondly, think about it. Reflect on what is in the book. And third, practice it, follow it. So if you just read it and you don't follow it, you'll be like the Quran said, you'll be like a donkey with books on his back. Think about that example. The donkey's got Quran, he's got Bukhari, Muslim, everything on his back. He should be a scholar, right? But he's just a donkey carrying it. It has no benefit to him because it's not going into his head. You see? That's what the Quran talks about. So when we look at the examples that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, we found that Allah told us in dealing with the Quran itself, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In Surah Yusuf verse 111, Allah said, in the stories, there are lessons for those people who would reflect. There's lessons for you in this book, right? And one of the beautiful parts about the book is that it brings issues from all parts of the universe. We are looking at the examples that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for us through the insect world. There's 3 insects that are mentioned clearly with chapters in the Quran. That is Surah An-Naml, the ant. Surah An-Nahl, which is the bee. And Surah An-Kabut, that is the spider. We looked at the ant and we were amazed to see the example of the ant. I'm sure now when you see ants walking around, you're going to think different about that ant. If you understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about, that creature there is the most successful animal that ever lived on earth. The ants live on every planet, every part of this planet, except for one place. Can anybody remember where it is? Antarctica. That's the only place, the South Pole. That's the only place they don't live. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gave us the example of the spider. And in this area, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا وإن أوهل البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون. So in this verse, which is in Surah An-Kabut verse 41, Allah said the parable of those who take guardians beside Allah is as the parable of the spider that makes for itself a house, and surely, most surely, the flimsiest, the frailest, means the weakest house, is the spider's house. If they only knew. So when you break this verse down and look at it, it is talking about the weakness of the house of the spider. And everybody knows about the house of the spider, right? The spider, it's a web. Okay? And the Quran is speaking about this and saying it is the flimsiest, it is the weakest. Awhan is come from wahan. And wahan is something which is frail, sick, and something that is weak. And the spider's house is not weak in terms of its design, because it is designed in an amazing way. It is a miracle how this is designed. But the problem is, a beautiful design, it does not protect you from the cold, from the heat. When it rains out, it can't stop you from the rain. It's a beautiful design, okay, but it cannot stop you from the rain. So the Quran is speaking about wahan. It is speaking about a weakness. And many of you may remember about the long hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was speaking about the fact that the nations would pounce on the Muslim world. Right? Like somebody calling to eating food. And the Sahaba said, will it be because our number is small? And he said, no, you will be large numbers, but you will be ghutha ka ghutha a sail. You will be like the foam and the sticks on a river. You push one way, pushed another way like foam. You have a lot of body, but it's no weight. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will take the fear of you out of the hearts of your enemies. And He will put a sickness in your heart. Wahan. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, what is this wahan? And He told them, it was hubb ad-dunya wa karahiyat al-maut. That you will love the life of this world and you will hate and be afraid to die. When that happens, right, you will be trampled over. Remember, that's the word, wahan, right? So this is the same one which is being used here. So the example is that, and this is method. It says methalul ladina. So whenever you see in the Quran method, that's an example, right? So Allah said that the example of those who take partners in the place of Allah, right, is like this weak house. It is the weakest thing you can possibly do. And so that means that these are different idols from Arabia. And many of the idols have a beautiful trapping to them. The idols represent the sun, the moon. They represent famous people, important things, right? But the idol can do nothing for you, right? So in other words, it's fool's paradise. It's a deception, okay? Worshipping idols is a deception because the idol can do nothing for you. So the Quran is saying that the example of those who worship other than Allah, right? It's a foolish thing. It's a weak, frail argument to worship these idols or to take anything in the place of Allah. And then He said, it's like the house of the spider. Okay? So now it's pointing us toward this house. But what do we need to know about the house of the spider? Okay? Number one, the web itself, the web of the spider, you can see how it is made. It's a beautiful design, and it is perfectly made to trap insects, right? It's a trap, right? Almost invisible trap. And it is this way that the spider is able to eat. Okay? But the weakness now, it means that there's a disease inside of this. There's something seriously wrong. Now, the example of the spider here, sometimes you get examples in the Quran which is something positive and good that you do, something you don't do. And the example of not doing something is an important example as well. So what about the spider itself? Okay, the spider is the largest of the arachnids. Okay, and the arachnids are insects, and I'll show you some of the arachnids. But in terms of all the creatures on earth, it is the 7th most popular creature of all on earth. Okay? And the only place that spiders do not live is where?
Antarctica.
Antarctica. So that means it's cold in the South Pole. So don't ever go down to the South Pole if anybody invites you, right? Only those penguins there. There's only a few creatures that can survive in Antarctica. These are arachnids. And I know for some people this is difficult because there's a thing called arachnophobia, right? Which is the fear of creatures, right? Especially spiders. And some people, because of watching movies or hearing stories, they have arachnophobia. Okay? But these are arachnids. The tick that bites you, scorpions, crab spider, garden spider, water spider, the tarantula, right? And the tarantula spider, this one here, that is the one. I hope nobody has arachnophobia here. But when you look at spiders themselves, there's about 45,700 species of spiders. And they're mostly predators. They eat their prey, right? This is what a spider is. And these are different types of spiders. You don't have to go into, but there's all kinds of spiders. And I'm sure in Bermuda, you've got plenty of spiders. Okay, many different kinds. And you know what's interesting about spiders? Is that 1 million spiders in 1 acre of a city. In 1 acre, 1 million spiders can live. Spiders are around us all the time. You don't necessarily know it. But the spiders are all around us. If you're in a jungle, in 1 acre, there can be 3 million spiders in just 1 acre of land. And arachnophobia, and especially this one frightened me when I was young, is the tarantula, right? Arachnophobia is common. 50% of women are afraid of spiders. Is anybody afraid of spiders here? 1 out of 2. Men, it's about 18%. Right, have arachnophobia. So if you put down a tarantula in this room, most of the people, even big tough men, will go running for the door because of a little creature, because of what it actually brings inside it. Okay? And the spiders themselves, they're amazing creatures, and it says that wherever human beings are, in most cases, a spider is within 10 feet of wherever you are. You know, Allah is merciful to us because our eyes only see a certain vision. Right now in this room, there are all kinds of creatures. If you go on a microscopic level, right, you'll see tiny mites and all in the carpets and all that. You know, all types of creatures are going. They even have what is called, you know, they have bed ticks. They have certain mites that are on the beds. If you don't change your sheets enough. Right? And so creatures are all around. The spider stays around where human beings are. And within 10 feet of where you are is probably a spider. But it's actually a mercy because the spiders are eating up insects. They're eating creatures around. They'll actually purify your existence. That's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because there's a role that is played. But you know what's interesting about a spider, and we need to understand this. Remember the Quran said that it's the frail and weak house. It is not because of the web itself. The thread of the spider, it is now considered to be, it is called biosteel. It is 5 times stronger than anything else. 5 times stronger. If it was made 5 times stronger than steel, and if it was made into rope, you'd need 30 centimeters wide. If you change this tiny web, made the equivalent in terms of rope, it could hold 150 cars. See how strong that is? This is how strong it is. And it'll actually stretch 5 meters before it will break. So it is really flexible and it is really strong. It is considered to be the strongest material in existence. And right now they are working on trying to understand what is the chemicals inside of this. They even made a movie, you know Spider-Man? Young people know Spider-Man, how he flies around and whatnot, right? But this is the concept of the web that he has, right? And the things that he's able to do. But it's interesting because this is the strongest biological substance known to humanity is this web right here. Okay? But what's the issue? This stuff is so strong that its strength can only be, the only thing close to it is quartz. If you melt quartz, you know, diamonds are really powerful too, can cut through a lot of things, right? But melted quartz is the only thing close to this. But what is the difference now? What is the weakness? The weakness is the house itself. There is something seriously wrong with the house of the spider. With the existence of the spider. And this is what we want to look at. It is a sick home, and we need to be able to protect ourselves from that. What is the story of the spider? Okay? The spiders, the main spider that you see, that does the work and everything, is a female spider. Okay? And this is the black widow spider. Do they have black widows in Bermuda? I don't think so. Okay. And the spider itself, the one who does the work with the webs and everything, is the female. So the female now builds the house, sets the traps, and she lives by herself. In a sense, what you could say, she's a single mother. She's a single mother. And that's her life. And she lives there. And the males, this picture here, that's the female and that's the male. Okay? And the males come around only when she needs them in order to produce babies. And if the male is like him, if he's 1% smaller, and I'm sorry to be so straightforward, after they finish mating, she kills him. She got no more use for this guy. She gets rid of him. This is a spider's house, right? Now remember, Allah said this is something you don't want your house to be, right? Because she's an angry single mother. She finishes with him. And when she lays the eggs, she hatches the eggs in a sack. Okay? And the sack is covered with silk. See the sack there? The sack is covered with silk, and a female can lay 2 to 1,000 eggs. Okay? But the problem is with the eggs, they're all developing inside of the sack. They're all stuck inside the sack. So as the babies are growing up inside the sack, they don't have enough space. So they have to fight each other. Because they don't have space, the closest one is their enemies. So they start fighting each other, and the young children will kill each other. They'll kill each other, and only the strongest amongst them will leave out of the sack and be able to survive. But that child that comes out of there has terrible memories of his home, right? That's bad. They had to fight their brothers and sisters because there wasn't enough space inside of their house. So they come out of that home with bad memories. Okay, and then go into the world. And especially the female who is coming out with these bad memories, this has an influence because now she comes out of the house and she's got to do the work. She's producing the thread. She's setting up the traps. Right? She lives a lonely life. She lives by herself and sets the traps. And then when males come in the area, then she relates to the male. If the male happens to be bigger than her, then he lives. But if he's 1% smaller, he's finished. She's angry, right? And this is the example that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Awhan al-Buyut, the Bayt al-Ankabut. This house is a sick house. And it's not their fault. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them for a reason. Because the spiders themselves they will eat more insects than birds and bats. Spiders eat more insects. They're she's a killing machine. And she will literally trap thousands of insects in your house and purify your house. So in order to be a killing machine, you got to be like an angry, you don't have a nice personality, right? So that's the personality of the spider. And especially in the case of the black widow spider. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is giving us a lesson. What are some of the lessons? Number one, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate guardian and protector. That you cannot be protected by idols, by the creatures on earth. They will give no protection. Secondly, that the husband in the marriage, right, should show respect, right, for his wife. And the respect that he gets from her is not just because he's a man, because he earns the respect. Now the spider is a little extreme case. The only way she's going to respect him, he's got to be bigger than her and he's got to be tougher than her, right? Otherwise, she's not giving him any respect. She's going to take him out, right? But the lesson for us is that the marriage is supposed to be two sides respecting each other. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Innama rijal shaqa'iq an-nisa." The Prophet said that men are the blood brothers and sisters of women. You're all from the same family. So the respect comes because the man in a relationship is what is called qawwam. Qawwam. And the Quran speaks about rijal qawwamuna ala nisa, that men are protectors and maintainers of women. Okay? But they earn that respect. And the mother's position for the work that she does and for the life that she has to live, many times when the men are sleeping, the babies are crying, the mother's up in the middle of the night. Some people, we used to say, a mother's work never ends. The man comes home from work, like me, I'm one of them, kick my legs up, I had a hard day. Her work never ends. Okay, and that has to be respected. Even in secular circles now. For a long time, they didn't even give women the same pay as men, which is a mistake. But from our relationships is one that if the man is providing for the family and the woman is now protecting and taking care of the home, it's a natural respect on two sides. It's not just a respect on one side, but it has to be respect on both sides. So the position of the mother has to be respected. Also, that mercy and love have to be the basis of an Islamic home. When the Quran in Surah Al-Rum is talking about the home, and it said that Allah made for us mawaddatan wa rahmah, that the Islamic home should be based on love and mercy. That's what our relationship's supposed to be. That we have to have mercy and love. That's the basis of our homes. Secondly, and this is an interesting point, remember what happened to the little children? That sufficient space should be given for children to develop themselves. Sufficient space should be given. And that is part, if you're setting up a home, right? If you're setting up a schedule, give space for the children to develop themselves. Okay? Because otherwise, something else can happen. And it's interesting about this chapter itself, because the name of the chapter is Al-Ankabut, right? And the word Ankabut is singular form of Arabic. It's singular, right? But, and that is because, the solitary life of the spider. But remember the other two chapters, Surah An-Nahl and Surah An-Naml, those are plural. So when Naml and Nahl is used, it means bees, ants, because they live together as a collective, right? Whereas the spider is solitary. So therefore the Quran is using This is part of the linguistic miracle of the Quran itself. And again, how could the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ know something like this? How could he know the life of a spider, especially in the Arabian desert? And how could he know that this is plural and the gnat is singular? So this is part of the miracle of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for those of you who have arachnophobia, especially for the sisters, I put this in here. This is a beautiful spider. See that one there? This is an Australian spider, right? And that's the one you need to keep in your mind and not the tarantula, right? This is a beautiful spider, and there are many spiders that are beautiful in the way that they are made. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this example. And again, it is part of our survival, which would turn it into revival. And that is that we have strong, empowered families. Okay, that all the members of the family have a say, and they are all strong, and this will protect us from a sick, weak house. Because if the homes are weak, then the community is weak. If the community is weak, then the nation is weak. If the nation is weak, then the ummah, which is all of our nations, will be weak. But when the families are strong, when the roots are strong in our families, then our communities can be strong. So this is part of our struggle, that we have to now take time with our families. We have to have shura, discussions amongst ourselves. We have to have even counseling, bring in counseling. We have to look at this family issue as one of the key issues for the success of our community. In the general society today, families are breaking down. They're falling apart. And what will help us, what will aid us in our revival, is the strong families, so that we would not be like Beit al-Ankabut. We would not have a house, a spider's house. And as Allah said, this is the weakest house that there is. If they only knew. See, well, no, lo kanu ya'lamun. This is a deep way to end the verse. If they would only know how weak this house is, they wouldn't fall into a trap like this. Mercy and love would be the basis of their family. Okay? Keeping relations in family. Even if you agree to disagree. Right? But as long as that love and mercy is there, then inshallah we can survive as a community under this onslaught that we're going through, Islamophobia, and the onslaught that our community is going through. So I want to open up the floor for any questions that anybody may have, or any comments concerning this. The Beit al-Ankabut, and this is the weakest possible house, the flimsiest house that there is in existence. Floor is open for any questions anybody may have concerning this Beit al-Ankabut, concerning the family issues or whatever other things. Okay, floor is open for any questions, brothers and sisters. Yes, brother.
As you say, the Muslims are part of the family.
Right.
And we have the so-called Sunni, so-called Shia.
Right.
And there is a difference in the family. People are fighting against each other. And how do we overcome that?
Yeah. Okay, the issue of, now this is a bigger issue now that you're talking about, because we're dealing with the family here, right? In the sense of our personal families, where we are married together and children and whatnot.
Yeah, you're dealing on
the ummah. You're talking on an ummah level, right? On a macro level, of the ummah itself, there has to be conflict resolution, and conflict resolution means, as I mentioned last night, I don't know if you attended, but the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, one of the legacies that he left for the ummah, right, is that he said, keep relations with those who cut you off. His last words came in this parchment. Do good to people even if they harm you. And speak the truth even if it's against yourself. And so that means that the only way we could solve the issue especially with splinter groups that splintered away from the major community, is that people have to speak the truth. And then we can resolve the conflict. Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said there would be liar prophets who would come into my nation. There would be people who would go back to worshiping idols from my nation. There would be those who would worship graves. He said the time would come when these things would happen. Right? But you need to stick on to the straight path, stay onto the book of Allah and my sunnah, hold on to it, right? And in some cases, he said, respect his family. Okay? But the problem is sometimes, and the issue of Sunni and Shia goes into it's very complex, right? But what I can say is that the position of the Sunnah is the vast majority of the Muslims based on the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and there's a lot of splinter groups that splintered away, right? And we have for centuries still allowed a place for these groups to come in, as long as they stick to the basic principles within Islam. There are some groups who even broke into smaller splinters, than just a regular Shia group. There are groups that even have their own prophets, right, who claim that they're actually Muslims, right? And the only way to deal with it is to speak the truth. One question says, today some wives make more money, sometimes it causes problems in the marriage. Okay, this is a very important question. Because the Quran is saying, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. That men are protectors and maintainers of women because Allah gave them a physical advantage over them, and secondly, because of what they spend on their wealth. So therefore, in a relationship, technically speaking, the providing for the family, the rent, and the food and the clothing and all of that is the duty of the man. It's his responsibility. It is not the responsibility of the woman. Okay? Now, in the situation that we're in today, many times one income is not enough for the family. Or maybe sometimes the man marries the sister and she has more money than him. Like in the case of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he married Khadijah, Khadijah was a wealthy woman, right? And he was poor, but he worked so hard, he gets so much respect that she said, I want to marry you. Even though she was above him in wealth, right? So therefore, technically speaking, the woman does not have to give anything toward the household. However, because of the situation we're living in many cases, there has to be an agreement. So in other words, if a woman is now working and she is paying 50% of the rent and the food and whatever, and he is paying 50% of the rent and he's working, they're both working, right? That means that the relationship has to change somewhat. If it was a case where the man is going out and working, bringing in money, and the mother is there working hard in the home with the children and the home and all the things, she may have crafts and trades at home, whatever. That's how it was traditionally. Okay? But now today in this world, both of them leave in the morning. They both go to work. She comes home at 5 o'clock at night, and he comes home at 6 o'clock, for example. The brother comes home and kicks his feet up and he says to her, Zainab, where's my dinner? Right? She just came home, right? From working 8 hours. And he said, where's my dinner? And she's been listening to the feminist movement and whatever. And so she turned to him and said, you cook the dinner. Because she just came home. How can she cook the dinner when she just came home from work and she's tired, right? So that means that there needs to be they have to make an agreement. He has to recognize that part of his authority he's given over to her because she's providing, right? And it doesn't mean that he's not a man. He doesn't have to feel, I'm not a man no more. You're still a man, right? But part of your authority, she's taking on part of your authority. She still has to have the children. She still has to go through her changes as a wife, right? So you need to do something to help. There's one case of a brother and sister that just came to me now. where the brother like lost his job and the sister is working, right? And he's spending most of the time, you know, at home, and he's trying to get a job, whatever. And she's working. So the reality is, he needs to take care of the house, right? Maybe he needs to learn how to cook, right? Because how can he expect her to be doing that? Because technically speaking, in a traditional Islamic home, the wife is not even compulsory on her to be cooking. They actually would have somebody else who would do the cooking, because she's dealing mainly with children. Okay, but in our world, this is how we break it down. So it's just, remember, if mercy and love is the basis of the home, you can work it out. You get it? But if it's a house of a spider, where there's no mercy, and she's bigger than him, she's bringing in the money, right? And he's, you know, acting like a weakling, then she's going to be angry and she's going to take him out. Beat him up, right? And humiliate him. Right? But that's not our house. Khadija, the example of Khadija radiallahu anha is amazing. You should read her life story. When the Prophet ﷺ came back from the revelation, Angel Jibreel had come. He was so afraid that he laid in his bed shivering, right? And she covered him up. Muzammil, right? Remember the Quran is talking. She covered him up. And she took care of him, right? She didn't say, "You weakling, what's your problem, boy?" She didn't say that. She took care of him and she said, "You are a strong person. What is it that happened to you?" And he said, "Something came to me." And you know how smart she was? The angel would come to the Prophet ﷺ, and then he would say, he's here. Now, Khadija could not see the angel. Okay? So on one occasion, the angel Jibreel came, the Prophet ﷺ could see, and then Khadija covered herself up, and she said, "He's here." And then she uncovered part of her leg. And then he said, "He's gone." And she said, "This is an angel. It's not a demon. It's not a devil." See how deep she was?
Yeah.
Because angels don't deal with nakedness, right? They're not going to come in the room. Right? She was so smart. And she said, "This is an angel coming to you. You're a prophet." So she strengthened him when he was so weak, he could have lost everything in his life. But she strengthened him, and that's the reason why the wise woman, in this case, if the husband is not doing so well, she'll strengthen him, right, until he can get on his feet. But he has to show respect to her as well, though, right? Because she is the one. And even the Prophet ﷺ said, there are some cases where you can actually lie to another person. Now usually you're not supposed to tell lies, right? But he said there's some cases where you can tell a lie. If the enemy is coming at you and they're asking you, where are the people? Like the enemy's coming at you and the Muslims are behind the hill here. Then you can lie and say, "They're over there." You can tell them a lie, right? Also, if two brothers are fighting each other or two sisters fighting each other, then you can go to one side and say, "Brother, he didn't mean that." Then you go to the other side, "Brother, no, he likes you actually." Like you can tell a little bit of a lie to bring peace. And the other way is flattery for your husband or wife. The husband now comes home from work, or maybe he lost the job, he's looking really bad. And she doesn't look, when she looks at him, she can say to him, "You little boy, you weakling." Right? She could break him down. Or she could say, "You are a lion." Right? Don't worry about those people. You're going to get a job. Flattery we can use on the wife as well. If the wife now, comes back, her makeup came off or something, whatever, and then he looks at his wife, she doesn't look as good as when he first married her, and then he said, "No, you are the most beautiful woman on earth." That's flattery, right? So you are allowed to tell lies to each other in order to flatter and to bring peace. But you know, the key thing is understanding, love and mercy. If you have love and mercy between you, you can work it out, right?
That's right.
You can work it out. It's all right. We're going to get over this. But if it's a competition between a husband and a wife, every little thing is like a court case, then you know then it's going to fall apart. That's why the Quran says, "Mawadda wa rahma." Okay, and this is where you know it's really important. I say in this case for the brothers especially, you know, to have respect. You know, and to, you know, set that house in a way that they can be love and mercy. Any other general questions anybody has? We're coming to a conclusion now. Yeah, that's...
Sheikh, so of course in every household there are some challenges, some struggles, either directly related to marriage or really as a family. What are the Islamic guidelines and principles really to handle those situations? And then how to resolve those.
Yeah. Okay, some of the issues that we brought within the 10 points, I mean, one of it, again, is cooperation. Even, you know, operational unity, that means your house is operational unity. You accept the strength of your wife, and she accepts your strength. You don't fight against each other, right? And you have understanding. And remember the concept of shura. Shura means mutual consultation. So if there is a misunderstanding between the husband and the wife, as the Quran says, that you should bring in hakaman min ahlihi wa hakaman min ahliha, bring in somebody from both sides and resolve the problem in counseling. Bring in a counselor. Don't just leave it between husband and wife, because the shaitan can come in, you know, and then it could become, you know, a pitch battle. So you bring in a person who's a friend, or an imam, or a counselor, or whatever it is, and then try to resolve the problem, you know, with shura, with no violence. There should be no violence in the Muslim family at all. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you know what his sunnah is? Not just 2 rakat sunnah. The Prophet never struck any woman in his house. He never raised his hand to her. All of his life. Okay? So these are some of the examples. I know it's difficult. We're under a lot of economic pressure. But we have to realize that maintaining our families is one of the greatest challenges in front of us. And it's one of the greatest successes. It may be difficult, but you need a strong house for the children to be raised in order to take over this. Otherwise, the children are going to have bad memories. Remember those spider children? They left that sack, they had bad memories. They had to fight their brother and sister. Their mother killed their father. I mean, think about that house, right? Your mother just finished killing your father, man, and you killed your brother and your sister. What are you going to be? You're going to be a gangster. You're going to be a gangster. What kind of life are you going to live? Right? So bad memories. We can't have bad memories in our families. Right? So this is important. And it's never too late to ask for forgiveness, right? Forgive each other. Right? We all make mistakes. But ask for forgiveness and go on. And you know, especially brothers, we have big egos. You know, but there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, I was wrong to my wife. Astaghfirullah, forgive me. I'm wrong. That's a man, right? That's a real man. And that's the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would act, right? That was his strength. Right? Not controlled by his ego or his anger, right? Remember what we said, the strong person is the one who controls himself when he's angry. That's the real strong person, and not the one who fights the good wrestler. So these are important lessons for us to learn, and take more time and read about the Ankabut. Go to the chapter of Surah Al-Ankabut, look at the tafsirs. This is a very important lesson. Inshallah, when I come back again, I hope to come back again, and we will deal with the bee. Right? There are other lessons for us to learn. But I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would help our community for us to unite ourselves and to
Two
unite
more
our families.
questions
Two
are
more.
there.
Okay, two more. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And related in a sense, like in terms of Islamic guidelines,
Yeah.
what is the rulings and then sort of suggestions for singles, either single parents or single otherwise, so in terms of marrying and then married again, as well as really for those, especially like here, a lot of foreign workers, some of the men or women live here, go once a time, like once annually back home. What is the Islamic guidelines and then suggestions?
Well, I mean, we do try to get married if possible. But otherwise, especially in the case of the male, because usually the problem here is with men. You have to watch out the places that you're going to. Right? You have to spend more time in dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah, and reading the Quran. And you know what's also recommended for single men? Fasting. You need to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. Or do the fast of Dawood every other day. Or 3 days. Especially here in Bermuda. I saw the way that some of those women are dressed. You all are in trouble, right? You're in trouble. So you gotta fast. Because fasting kills your desires, right? So do a lot of fasting, a lot of remembrance of Allah. Right? Come to the masjids regularly. Right? Spend your time swimming, go underwater so you can look at the fish. Right? Instead of the people, right? Do something, you gotta lower your gaze, man. You gotta know how to control your eyes, right? It's a key thing, like we learned in Ramadan. You gotta control your eyes, right? I know it's difficult here, but you got to learn to control your eyes. Right? Because the first glance, if you looked at something wrong, the first glance is for Allah. That was a mistake. But the second one, that's the shaitan. You know what I'm talking about, right, brothers? The first glance, but then this one. The second one, right? That's the shaitan. The first one, that was a mistake, and then lower your gaze. Now, another question? Yes, sister.
As you know, Sheikh, obviously Islam just facing the genocide by Chinese government. As part of the whole life, our life destroyed. Our children just facing that. We just try to minimize the effect of them, the children.
Right.
Just do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, well, you know, we all prayed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make it easy on you. The prayers of the Ummah are for the Uyghur nation. Kashmir is now on lockdown. The Palestinians in Gaza, they're on lockdown. And so, you know, our dua is for you, inshallah. And we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you a special reward in the next life for the struggles that you are going through. But it requires a lot of patience and prayer. A lot of patience and prayer, and look to the next life. This life is short, but look to the hereafter. That is where the great reward will be, inshallah, for those who have patience in this ummah. A lot of Muslims are under pressure now. This case of the Uyghur Muslims is maybe one of the worst, that we are facing. But we know that the prophets were the ones who got the worst punishment, and then the people who Allah loved, He actually put them through difficulties. So in a sense, it may be, and Allah knows best, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a special reward, for you and for all those, who are going through this right now, in Kashmir, in Palestine, in many places where the Muslims are on lockdown situation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy in the situation. Yes.
Just one more. I just wonder, because a lot of people I hear that listen to me on everything, and you talk about and can you give us a quick rundown of that then?
On what?
On the end.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's there's a tape here actually. Inshallah, anybody who needs that, we're going to ask Brother Muhammad Khan to produce the tapes where you can listen to the whole, because you need to listen to the full lecture on the ants itself, inshallah. You had a question?
So, why do the women marry the men when they just kill the men after they marry and the children?
You mean the spiders?
Yeah.
The spiders. Yes, because the spiders, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has made them, they have to do that. They are made in such a way that they have to do that. They have no choice. Because they have instinct. There's certain things that Allah builds into the creature. And, she attracts them too, right? The black widow spider is a beautiful spider, right? So she attracts the man too. So he comes like a fool, right? Just like some men downtown, on Friday night. They think, oh, she's beautiful. And then they end up, with HIV, AIDS or whatever. It's a trap, right? So sometimes they're trapped into doing it. Other times, it's their duty to do it. And maybe some of the men are saying, I'm going to sacrifice myself for Allah. I'm going to go to this woman, she's going to beat me up, but I'll do it for Allah. That's a different story, right, brothers? That's a different story.
What kind of parable you draw between this, like in this house being so fragile,
Yeah.
versus the incident in Syria where Prophet ﷺ was inside the cave? So it's such a fragile thing. What kind of inference do we draw? What is Allah trying to tell us?
Right, what it is that the web of the spider is actually strong, and it's a beautiful design, right? But it's only useful for certain things. It cannot protect you from the cold and the rain, and that situation that happened when the Prophet ﷺ was escaping. The scholars say clearly, it's not just the web of the spider; it is the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, the spider web was there, or some say it was eggs in a nest. Some even say there was nothing there. But it was the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ultimately. Okay?
The design of the spider wasn't broken.
Right, but the spider is just, used as an example. Right, but it's really the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the mushrikeen could have walked and kicked it over, right? Because it's not strong enough to stop somebody walking through. But it's the power of Allah, really, that saved them, from the mushrikeen at that point in time. Okay, so I think we're going to close here, and alhamdulillah, we had a very nice time with you here on behalf of my wife. We also want to thank you, inshallah, this community, and it's our prayer that we become united as much as we possibly can, and we help each other and give assistance. Never forget the Muslims who are suffering in different parts of the Muslim world. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us, and may Allah give us the best in this life and the hereafter. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.